The battlefield station was supposed to be empty, but Daniel Hayes knew that was a lie the moment his boots touched the metal floor. The lights above him flickered weakly. Smoke drifted through broken hallways, and somewhere deep inside the structure, something heavy crashed, and then went silent. He swallowed and tightened his grip on his repair scanner. He was not a soldier. He was just an engineer sent to recover lost data after the alien attack suddenly stopped. Earth Command believed the alien fleet had retreated, but Daniel felt like something was still here, watching, waiting. The station floated in orbit above a dead moon, half destroyed by weapons fire. Parts of its outer ring were open to space, and frozen bodies drifted slowly outside the shattered glass. Daniel forced himself not to look at them. He kept moving forward, following a weak life signal on his scanner. It was faint but stable, which made no sense because no human crew survived this battle. That meant only one thing. The signal was alien. He told himself he would just confirm it and leave. He did not sign up for first contact heroics. But as he turned the corner, he saw her, trapped beneath a fallen support beam, tall, silver skin glowing softly in the emergency lights. Dark markings across her face like living armor. Her uniform was different from the other alien soldiers he had seen before, more detailed, more elegant. Even damaged, it looked royal. She was awake. Her eyes followed him calmly. Not with fear, not with anger, just calm focus. Daniel froze, his heart slammed against his chest. This was the enemy, the same species that had nearly destroyed 3 human cities in one day. He should call command, he should walk away, but then he saw the beam crushing her lower body. He saw the blood, dark blue and slowly spreading, and something inside him overpowered the fear. He stepped closer. The alien did not move to attack. Instead, she studied him like he was the strange one. "I am not a soldier," Daniel muttered under his breath, as if that explained anything. He activated his lift tool and placed it under the beam. The machine hummed loudly. The metal groaned. Sparks fell around them. He strained as the beam slowly lifted. The alien did not scream. She did not even blink. She simply watched him with that same steady expression. Finally, the beam shifted enough for her to pull free. She stood slowly despite her injury, taller than him by at least a head. Her presence filled the hallway. Daniel stepped back, suddenly aware of how small he was compared to her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, smoke drifting between them, distant explosions echoing somewhere far below. Then she did something unexpected. She stepped closer and placed her hand flat against his chest, right over his heart. His suit's sensors flickered wildly. His translator device buzzed with static. Alien symbols flashed across his visor. He tried to pull back, but her grip was firm, not painful, just certain. She spoke in a low melodic tone, the language flowing like music. His translator struggled to keep up. The words broke apart and reformed, error messages flashing red. And then finally one phrase pushed through clearly. "Union accepted." Daniel blinked. "What?" he whispered, a nervous laugh escaping him. "I was just helping." The alien's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time he noticed something strange in her expression. Not gratitude, not relief, something deeper, something almost final. Suddenly the entire station trembled. Alarms that had been silent for hours roared back to life. Lights turned from yellow to deep crimson. Daniel stumbled and looked toward the viewport at the end of the hall. Through cracked glass he could see space, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The alien warships that had been positioned aggressively around Earth were powering down their weapons. Massive cannons folding inward, energy shields lowering, formation shifting from attack to defensive guard. He stared in disbelief. This made no sense. Earth Command had been preparing for the second wave of invasion, not retreat. His communicator suddenly activated with static. Then a panicked voice broke through. "Daniel, what did you do?" "I did not do anything," he shot back, glancing at the alien woman still standing inches from him. "I just saved someone." On the main alien flagship, far above the station, a bridge filled with armored commanders had gone silent. One by one they lowered their weapons and bowed their heads. The largest among them dropped to one knee, his voice steady and filled with absolute loyalty. "The Queen has chosen," he said. Back in the ruined hallway, Daniel felt the alien woman straighten fully. Despite her injury, she looked powerful, unshaken, unstoppable. She removed her hands slowly from his chest, but her eyes never left his face. The translator cleared once more, this time with no static at all. Her voice now perfectly understood. By sacred law, life for life binds us, she said calmly. Daniel's smile faded. Behind her, through the broken window, the alien fleet shifted position again, this time forming a protective circle around the station, not an attack line, a guard formation. His communicator crackled with fear from Earth Command, but he barely heard it, because the alien woman stepped even closer and spoke one final sentence that made his stomach drop. You are now bound to the throne. Daniel Hayes had come to repair a broken station. He thought he was helping a wounded enemy. He never imagined that one small act of kindness could stop a war or start something far more dangerous. If you want to see what happens next and uncover what this bond truly means, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next part of this story. Daniel did not understand how a simple rescue turned into something that made an entire alien fleet kneel. But the moment the Queen finished speaking, the broken station was no longer just debris in space. It became the center of something ancient and powerful. Within minutes, armored alien soldiers arrived through a glowing transport beam. Their armor darker and far more advanced than the ones Earth had fought before. They did not aim weapons at Daniel. They did not even look at him with hatred. Instead, they lowered their heads as they approached the silver-skinned woman beside him. The sovereign is secured, one of them said in their sharp, echoing language. Daniel stared at her. Sovereign, he repeated quietly, his stomach tightening. He had not saved a random soldier. He had saved their leader. The Queen, Sirac Thel, stood tall despite the injury that should have left her weak. Her posture was calm, controlled, powerful. She gave a single small nod, and the soldiers immediately formed a protective circle around both of them. Not just her, both of them. Daniel noticed that detail, and it frightened him more than the warships outside. He tried to activate his communicator again, but this time there was no signal at all. Earth Command had vanished into silence. A beam of blue light surrounded them, and before Daniel could protest, the ruined hallway disappeared, replaced by a vast chamber of polished black metal and floating light symbols that moved like living constellations. The air felt different here, lighter, but charged with energy. This was not a battlefield ship. This was something greater. He stood inside the main throne chamber of the alien flagship. Thousands of alien figures filled the curved balcony levels above, warriors, officers, officials, all watching him in complete silence. Their glowing eyes focused not on their queen, but on him. Daniel swallowed hard. There is some mistake, he muttered, his voice echoing more loudly than he expected. Sirac Thel stepped forward and raised her hand. The entire chamber lowered into a kneeling position instantly. The sound of metal armor hitting the floor echoed like thunder. Rise, she commanded, and they obeyed as one. Her translator device, far more advanced than his small human unit, activated clearly, her voice now perfectly fluent in his language, calm and steady. Human Daniel Hayes, your action upon the battlefield has triggered the law of union, she said. I only lifted a beam, he replied quickly, almost laughing from disbelief. I did not sign anything. I did not agree to anything. She turned her gaze toward him slowly, and for the first time he saw something like curiosity in her expression. In our civilization, she explained, to give life to the sovereign while facing death is not charity. It is declaration. Declaration of what? He asked, his voice thinner now. Dominance and devotion, she answered. The words struck him like a physical force. The chamber remained silent, listening to every word. You acted without fear, she continued. You stood above me when I was vulnerable. You chose my survival over your safety. Under our oldest law, that act formed a life bond, a union witnessed by battle, sealed by touch. Daniel remembered her hand against his chest, the translator glitching, the words union accepted. That was not gratitude, she said softly, reading the realization in his eyes. That was consent under law. The balcony levels shifted slightly as thousands of alien citizens leaned forward, waiting for his reaction. "So what does that mean?" he asked carefully. "This union." Sarakhthel stepped closer, her voice lowering so that only the chamber's central level could hear clearly. "It means you are bound to me as mate and equal," she said. The word mate echoed inside his mind louder than the battle alarms earlier. A wave of energy pulsed across the chamber walls, ancient symbols glowing brighter, confirming something sacred had already been recorded. "This is insane," Daniel whispered. "I am human. You are—" He gestured helplessly, unable to finish the sentence. "The sovereign of the Carthian Empire," she completed calmly. "And now, by our law, you stand beside the throne." Above them, a massive holographic projection appeared, showing the alien fleet repositioning around Earth, no longer in attack formation, but in protective alignment. Shields expanded outward like a barrier between Earth and deep space. "Your world is no longer designated as target," Sarakhthel said. "It is now under sovereign protection." Daniel's mind raced, billions of human lives hanging in the balance of a misunderstanding. "And if I refuse?" he asked carefully, forcing the words out. For the first time, the chamber felt colder. Several high-ranking warlords on the balcony shifted uneasily. "If you reject the Union publicly," Sarakhthel said with complete honesty, "it will be interpreted as insult and challenge. My authority will fracture, civil war will ignite, and your species will be blamed for the dishonor." He stared at her, realizing this was not manipulation. This was structure, ancient and rigid. "You are telling me that helping you started a marriage," he said slowly. "In your language, yes," she replied. "In ours, it is more." The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon he had seen. Far above Earth, alien warships stood guard like silent giants, waiting for their queen's next command. Daniel Hayes thought he had saved one life in a broken hallway. He now understood he had activated a law older than his entire civilization, and somewhere deep inside the alien empire, factions were already deciding whether this human was worthy of standing beside their queen, or whether he needed to be removed. Sarakhthel looked at him once more, not as prisoner, not as hostage, but as something chosen. "The Union has been declared," she said quietly. "Now you must decide how you will stand within it." And for the first time since the war began, Daniel realized the battle was no longer between fleets in space. It was between tradition and survival, and he was standing directly in the center of it. On Earth, the celebration lasted exactly 9 minutes before it turned into fear. At first, the Global Defense Network reported something impossible. The alien fleet that had surrounded the planet in attack formation was pulling back, their main cannons powered down, their energy signatures shifting from offensive red to defensive blue. News stations interrupted regular broadcasts. Social media exploded with hope. People in major cities stepped outside and looked up at the sky where the massive, dark shapes hovered like silent gods. And for a brief moment, humanity believed the nightmare was over. Then the message arrived. It did not come through normal communication channels. It appeared on every major satellite feed at the same time, on military screens, on civilian devices, even on private secure networks. A single symbol filled the screen first, a glowing silver crest shaped like interlocking circles. Then translated text appeared beneath it in clear human language. "Hostilities are suspended. The sovereign has entered Union. Earth is designated under royal consideration." That was all. No explanation. No treaty, no demand. In the Underground War Command Center in Geneva, world leaders stared at the screen in silence. Generals who had prepared nuclear retaliation strategies now looked like confused students. Scientists rushed to analyze the alien phrasing. Linguists pulled archived transmissions from previous encounters, and one phrase repeated across the data: "Union under battle witness." "What does that mean?" the United Defense Secretary demanded. A senior xenolinguist adjusted her glasses and spoke carefully. "In previous intercepted records, Union refers to a life bond between ruling entities." "You mean alliance?" someone said quickly. She hesitated. "Not exactly. More personal than alliance. closer to dynastic merger. The room grew colder. Meanwhile, in orbit, Daniel's empty shuttle drifted near the damaged station, broadcasting automated distress pings. Earth Command had lost contact with him the moment he was transported to the flagship. His last transmission replayed on the central screen again and again. "I just saved someone," he had said, confusion clear in his voice. Now analysts compared his timestamp to the moment the alien fleet changed formation. The timing was identical. "You are telling me," a European prime minister said slowly, "that a civilian engineer may have altered the invasion by accident." Before anyone could answer, a second message arrived from the alien fleet, this one directed only to Earth leadership. The same silver crest appeared, followed by a clearer statement. "The human Daniel Hayes has been recognized as bonded consort under Carthian sovereign law." The word consort landed like an explosion inside the room. "That means spouse," the linguist whispered, her face pale. Across the planet, the public only knew that the alien ships were no longer attacking, but inside government circles panic spread like fire because this was not surrender, it was not peace, it was something far more complicated. If Daniel had entered a political marriage with the alien queen, then by their law Earth was no longer just an enemy planet. It was tied to the throne. A military strategist spoke quietly. "In monarchic systems, marriage creates claim." "Claim to what?" Another leader asked. "To territory, to loyalty, to inheritance," he replied. On the alien flagship, Daniel stood beside Sarakhthel, while a holographic projection displayed Earth below them. He could see the curve of the planet, blue and fragile against the darkness, and he could almost imagine the millions of people looking up at the sky right now, unaware that their fate was balanced on a law he never meant to activate. "You must understand," Sarakhthel said calmly, sensing his growing fear. "Your species is now politically linked to mine." "Linked how?" he asked. "Through me," she replied, "and through you." Back on Earth, intelligence agencies uncovered older alien battle logs from centuries ago. In those records, Union was mentioned only in connection with empire expansion. Whenever a sovereign bonded with another ruling figure, their civilizations merged under shared protection and shared authority. This is not symbolic, the linguist confirmed. This is structural integration. The room erupted into arguments. Some leaders saw opportunity, alien technology, protection from other cosmic threats, advancement beyond imagination. Others saw danger, loss of sovereignty, potential cultural collapse. "What if he refuses?" someone asked. The xenolinguist answered softly, "that it may be interpreted as rejection of the sovereign herself." "And that means," the defense secretary pressed. "War," she finished. High above, alien warships shifted again, this time forming a massive defensive perimeter around Earth, shielding it not only from themselves but from the rest of the galaxy, their scanners scanning deep space, guarding, protecting, claiming. Daniel watched the formation change and felt the weight of billions pressing down on him. He had wanted to fix broken machines, not rewrite planetary politics. On Earth, governments drafted emergency protocols for first interspecies marriage law, something no one had ever imagined needing. Psychologists debated how humanity would react if their representative was now technically alien royalty, and conspiracy theories flooded the internet claiming Daniel had planned this from start. But in the quiet of the throne chamber, Sarakhthel spoke one truth that echoed louder than the panic below. "If you stand beside me, your world will never face extinction again," she said. "And if I walk away?" Daniel asked, barely breathing. Her silver eyes did not waver. "My empire will demand proof of strength," she answered, "and Earth will be tested." On the surface of Earth, millions looked at the sky in hope, but inside command centers fear had replaced celebration. Because humanity was not free yet, it was bound by a marriage it did not attend, tied to a throne it did not choose, and somewhere between love, law, and war, a single human engineer now carried the future of two civilizations on his shoulders. The throne chamber slowly emptied until only a small circle of royal guards remained, their armor dimmed but their eyes alert. The great balconies above went dark one by one, and for the first time since Daniel arrived on the flagship, The silence felt personal rather than political. The massive holographic projection of Earth faded into a faint blue glow, leaving only him and Queen Sarakhthel standing beneath the high curved ceiling of living metal. Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. "You could have told them it was a mistake," he said quietly, his voice no longer shaking but heavy with frustration. "You are their queen. They would believe you." Sarakhthel did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked toward the far end of the chamber where a wide window revealed the stars stretching endlessly beyond the fleet. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, tall and unbreakable. But when she spoke, her tone carried something different, something almost human. "I could not," she said. "That is not an answer," Daniel replied, stepping closer. She turned to face him, and for the first time since he met her, her expression was not calm authority, it was memory. "In our empire," she began slowly, "a sovereign does not rule by birthright alone. We rule by conquest, by strength proven before witnesses. My claim to the throne was challenged from the moment I inherited it." Daniel frowned. "You mean your own people fight you?" "They test me," she corrected. "Every weakness is studied. Every hesitation is recorded. If I had died on that station, there would already be civil war across half my territory." He remembered the battlefield, the fallen beam crushing her, the blood spreading across the floor. "You were ready to die," he said softly. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Better death in battle than humiliation in retreat." The honesty in her voice unsettled him more than the warships had. "When you entered that corridor," she continued, "you were unarmed, untrained for combat, and fully aware I was your enemy. Yet you lifted the weight from me without demand, without fear. In our culture that is not mercy, it is dominance through courage." Daniel shook his head. "It was just the right thing to do." "To you," she said gently. "To my people, it is the act of a superior standing above the sovereign and choosing her survival." He stepped back slightly, trying to process the twisted logic. "So by your law," he said carefully, "I accidentally challenged your authority and won." A faint smile touched her lips, the first true smile he had seen. "Yes," she replied. The weight of that answer settled heavily between them. "You could have ignored it," he insisted. "You could have said I meant nothing, and prove my weakness to every warlord who already waits for my failure," she asked calmly. "If I deny the Union, they will say I was saved by a lesser being and rejected him in shame. If I accept it, they must honor the strength I recognized." Daniel stared at her, realizing this was not a romantic mistake, it was survival strategy. "You used me," he said quietly. Her eyes darkened slightly. "I honored the law," she corrected, "and I protected your world." Silence stretched between them. But it was no longer hostile, it was complicated. "Did you plan any of this?" he asked after a moment. "No," she answered immediately, and there was no deception in her voice. "I did not plan to be trapped beneath falling steel, and I did not plan for a human to lift it." She stepped closer now, the distance between them shrinking. "When I placed my hand on your chest," she said softly, "I felt your heart racing. I sensed your fear, yet you did not retreat. That is not weakness, Daniel. That is rare." He looked away, uncomfortable with the intensity of her gaze. "You do not understand my empire," she continued, her voice lowering. "We expand through force. We respect only those who can stand against us. When you saved me, you did not beg for peace, you did not negotiate, you acted. That act bound you to me under the oldest rule we possess." "And what if I do not want to be bound?" he asked. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her expression. "Then I will still protect your species," she said. "But my rule will fracture, challengers will rise, and the galaxy will interpret your refusal as insult. They will not see a misunderstanding. They will see weakness in me." "And weakness in you means war," he finished quietly. "Yes," she confirmed. He walked toward the wide window and looked down at Earth glowing peacefully below, unaware of how fragile its safety truly was. "You said I stand beside the throne," he said after a long pause. "Does that mean I have power, or am I just a symbol?" She moved to stand beside him, their reflections overlapping in the glass, human and alien side by side. "You have power," she answered, "because I grant it openly, not as decoration, but as partner." "Partner," he repeated slowly. "I did not choose you for control," she said, her voice steady but softer now. "I chose you because in that corridor, surrounded by death, you acted without hatred, and I have ruled among hatred for too long." The confession hung in the air heavier than any political declaration. Far beyond the fleet, long-range sensors began detecting movement from distant sectors of space. Rival factions already reacting to the news of the Union, testing, watching, calculating. Sarac sensed it before the alarms fully activated. Her posture straightened once more, the Queen returning to the surface. "Our time for private truth is short," she said. Daniel turned to her, understanding finally that this was no longer about accident or misunderstanding. It was about choice. "You saved my life," she said quietly, "but you also changed the balance of my empire. Now others will come to see whether the human who stands beside me is worthy." In the distance, warning lights began to glow along the walls of the flagship, subtle but unmistakable. And Daniel realized the next battle would not be fought in a ruined hallway. It would be fought in the heart of an empire that respected only strength. And somehow he, an ordinary engineer, was now expected to prove he possessed it. The warning lights across the flagship did not flash in panic. They pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, controlled and deliberate, which made them far more frightening. Daniel stood beside Queen Sarac as armored officers rushed into the chamber and dropped to one knee, their movements sharp and disciplined, but there was tension in the air now, something sharp and restless. "High Warlord Correx has entered the outer ring," one officer announced. "He demands right of proof." Daniel did not need a translator to understand that the words were dangerous. Sarac expression hardened, the softness from their private conversation gone, replaced by the cold authority of a ruler who had survived countless internal threats. "He moves quickly," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Who is Correx?" Daniel asked. "The strongest of my military commanders," she replied without looking at him. "He controls 3 battle fleets and believes expansion should never pause for diplomacy. And he does not like humans," Daniel guessed. "He does not like weakness," she corrected, then finally met his eyes, "and he believes you are weakness." The chamber doors opened with a deep metallic echo, and the temperature seemed to drop as a towering alien figure entered. Larger than the others Daniel had seen, his armor layered with jagged plates like a living fortress, scars cut across his silver skin. Glowing faintly under the chamber lights, his eyes burned with open challenge. Correx did not kneel. The silence that followed was not respectful, it was electric. "You bring a fragile species into our bloodline." Correx's voice thundered across the chamber, translated instantly into Daniel's language. "You bind the throne to soft flesh." Sarac did not raise her voice. "The law of union was fulfilled before witnesses," she stated calmly. "It cannot be undone." "Then it must be proven," Correx replied sharply. "Right of proof." The words echoed through the chamber, and Daniel felt every gaze shift toward him. He leaned slightly toward the Queen. "What is right of proof?" he asked under his breath. She answered without hesitation, "A challenge to test whether you are worthy to stand beside the sovereign." "And if I fail," he pressed. Correx answered for her, stepping forward with heavy, deliberate steps that shook the floor. "If you fail, the Union is declared void through weakness, and Earth becomes subject to correction." Correction. Daniel did not like the calm way the word was spoken. "You want to fight me?" Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You are twice my size." Correx's eyes narrowed slightly. "Strength is not measured in size alone," he said, though his tone carried clear confidence in physical superiority. Sarac stepped between them slightly, not to shield Daniel, but to assert control. "The right will follow tradition," she declared. "Combat within the arena of witness. No fleet interference, no orbital strikes." Daniel blinked. Arena? Within minutes, he was escorted through long corridors into a massive circular chamber deep inside the flagship. its walls lined with tiered platforms where warriors and officials gathered to watch. Energy barriers shimmered along the outer ring, containing whatever would happen inside. The arena floor was made of dark metal panels divided by glowing lines, and at its center stood Correx, removing parts of his heavy armor until only flexible battle plating remained, revealing dense muscle and old combat scars. Daniel looked down at himself, still wearing his engineer's suit, slightly burned from the ruined station. "This is not a fair fight," he muttered. Sarakhthel approached him one last time before the barriers sealed, her voice low and serious. "The right does not require you to overpower him," she said. "It requires you to demonstrate worth." "Define worth?" Daniel asked. "Survive," she replied. The energy barrier activated with a sharp hum, cutting him off from her. Correx stepped forward, towering and confident. "Show me why the Sovereign binds herself to you," he growled. Daniel's mind raced. He knew he could not win through brute force. One direct strike for Correx would likely end him. But he was not a soldier, he was an engineer. He studied the arena floor quickly, noticing small access seams between panels, faint energy currents running beneath them. Correx charged suddenly, faster than Daniel expected, the ground shaking under each step. Daniel barely rolled aside as a massive fist slammed into the floor, cracking the metal panel where he had been standing. Pain shot through his shoulder as he hit the ground. The crowd above roared in approval at the display of power. Daniel scrambled up, dodging another heavy strike, his mind calculating distances, timing, energy flow beneath the surface. He pulled a small multi-tool from his belt, not a weapon, just a device for repairs. Correx laughed at the sight of it. "You bring tools to war," he mocked. Daniel pressed the tool against a seam in the arena floor as he rolled away from another attack. Sparks burst from the contact point. The glowing lines across the floor flickered briefly. Correx lunged again, confident and aggressive, driving Daniel toward the center of the arena. But Daniel had noticed something earlier. The arena's energy shield drew power from the same grid beneath the floor panels, and Correx's heavy strikes were destabilizing it. As Correx raised both arms for a final crushing blow, Daniel slammed his tool into the central energy node and overloaded the panel. The floor beneath Correx's feet shifted suddenly, the energy grid collapsing in a controlled surge. A burst of electromagnetic force shot upward, not lethal, but powerful enough to disrupt balance and armor systems. Correx staggered, his heavy form crashing to one knee as his battle plating sparked and locked temporarily. The arena fell silent. Daniel stood breathing hard, bruised and shaken, but still standing. He did not attack the fallen warlord. He stepped back instead, lowering his tool. "I'm not here to conquer," he said loudly, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I am here because I chose to save a life, not take one." Correx looked up slowly, anger fading into something else, something closer to recognition. The energy barrier dissolved, and Sarakhthel stepped into the arena, her presence commanding absolute silence. "The right of proof is fulfilled," she declared, her voice resonating through every level of the chamber. "Strength is not only force, it is control." Correx bowed his head just slightly, but enough. High above Earth, the alien fleet maintained its protective formation, but now the message spreading through the Empire was different. The human was not fragile. He was unconventional, dangerous in ways they did not fully understand. And Daniel realized this was only the first challenge, because in an empire built on power, earning respect once did not guarantee safety. It only guaranteed that stronger tests would follow. The arena victory changed the tone of the empire, but it did not end the tension. If anything, it made everything heavier, because now Daniel was no longer seen as an accident. He was a factor, a variable in the balance of power. Alien commanders who once dismissed him now studied him carefully, some with respect, others with quiet calculation, and far beyond the flagship. Rival factions began moving fleets toward Carthian territory, testing the strength of this unexpected union. In the days that followed, Daniel was given access to parts of the ship few outsiders had ever seen, strategic chambers where star systems floated as holographic projections, council halls where ancient laws were carved into living crystal walls, and observation decks, where he could see Earth constantly guarded by massive alien vessels. Never attacked, never threatened, just protected. Earth Command finally restored limited communication through a controlled diplomatic channel approved by the Queen, and when Daniel saw the faces of human leaders on the secure transmission, he realized how much had changed in so little time. They did not look at him as an engineer anymore. They looked at him as leverage. Daniel, the defense secretary said carefully, "You need to understand the opportunity here." Opportunity. He almost laughed at the word. "You are legally recognized within their imperial structure," another leader added, "that gives us direct influence at the highest level." Influence, Daniel repeated quietly, glancing at Sirac Thel, who stood beside him during the transmission, listening without interruption. A scientist leaned forward on the screen. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their military presence around Earth guarantees security against other threats. This union could elevate humanity beyond anything we imagined." "And what do you want me to do?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. The silence on the human side lasted just long enough to feel uncomfortable. "Stay," the secretary finally said, "at least for now." The word landed heavier than any warlord challenge. "Stay." Remain in an alien empire as bonded consort to a queen, not because he chose love, not because he sought power, but because it was strategically beneficial. The transmission ended, leaving Daniel alone again with Sirac Thel in the observation chamber overlooking Earth. "You heard them," she said calmly, her silver eyes reflecting the blue glow of his planet. "Yes," he replied. "They see advantage," she continued, not accusing, simply stating truth. "They see survival," Daniel corrected softly. "And what do you see?" she asked, turning fully toward him now, her posture no longer purely regal but searching. He struggled to answer because this was no longer about law or war or empire. This was about identity. "I see my world," he said slowly. "I see people who did not choose this, who are safe right now because of something I did without thinking, and I do not know if staying here protects them or traps them." Sirac Thel stepped closer, her presence steady but not overwhelming. "If you return to Earth and renounce the Union," she said honestly, "I will still defend your species from external threats. But internally my empire will fracture. Challengers will claim that I bonded with weakness and was abandoned. They will test my fleets, and in that chaos Earth will become symbol rather than partner." "And if I stay," he pressed. "If you stay," she answered, "the Union strengthens, dissent weakens, and Earth becomes integrated as protected ally, not subject." "Integrated," he repeated carefully, "not conquered." "Not conquered," she confirmed. "Your governments remain intact, your culture untouched, but you will share in imperial defense and diplomacy." It sounded almost reasonable when she said it like that, but Daniel understood that integration meant long-term change, shared systems, shared responsibilities, shared consequences. Beyond the viewport, distant sensor alerts began flashing quietly, small but noticeable. Rival fleets approaching the outer edge of Carthian territory, not attacking yet, just watching, measuring. "They are waiting to see what I choose," Daniel realized aloud. "Yes," Sirac Thel said, "they test not only me, but you." He walked closer to the glass, staring at Earth one more time, thinking of the ruined station where this all began, of lifting a metal beam because it felt right, not strategic, not political, just human. "I never wanted power," he said quietly, "and I never expected partnership from a human," she replied with equal honesty. Silence settled between them, but it was no longer heavy with misunderstanding. It was filled with possibility and risk. "If I stay," Daniel said slowly, turning to face her fully now, "it will not be as a symbol and not as a hostage to tradition." Her gaze sharpened slightly, interested. "It will be because I choose it," he continued. "And if I choose it, I expect real authority, real voice, not ceremonial presence." Sirac Thel studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head in deliberate respect. "Then stand beside me as equal," she said, "not as obligation, but as decision." Outside, the distant fleets shifted slightly, waiting. Daniel took one final breath. understanding that going back to Earth would return him to safety, but leave his species vulnerable to Imperial instability, while staying would bind his life to an alien throne, but secure peace across two civilizations. He looked once more at the blue planet below, then at the Queen who had once been his enemy and now stood as something far more complicated. "I will stay," he said firmly, "not for empire, not for power, but for Earth." And as the words left his mouth, distant rival fleets altered course, some retreating, some recalculating, the balance of the region shifting subtly in response to a single human decision. Daniel Hayes had lifted a beam to save a life, and now he had chosen to stand at the center of an empire, not because he was strongest, but because he understood that sometimes the hardest act of strength is deciding where you belong. The announcement was not made in secret. It was broadcast across two civilizations at once, from the heart of the Carthian flagship to every major city on Earth, and to every war fleet drifting at the edge of Imperial space. The throne chamber transformed into a hall of witness, its dark metal walls glowing with ancient symbols that recorded law in living light. Thousands of alien officials filled the rising balconies again, armored warlords standing beside scholars and diplomats. And for the first time, human representatives appeared as holographic figures within the chamber, projected from Earth's United Command Center, watching history unfold in real time. Daniel stood at the base of the throne platform, no longer in a damaged engineer's suit, but in formal attire designed jointly by human and Carthian artisans, a fusion of dark fabric and subtle silver lines that reflected both species without erasing either. He felt the weight of every eye on him, alien and human alike, and yet the fear that once followed him through broken corridors had changed into something steadier, something chosen. Queen Sirachthel descended from her elevated seat slowly, not as conqueror, not as distant ruler, but as sovereign making a public declaration. Her presence commanded silence instantly. Even the restless warlords who once questioned Daniel now stood motionless. "By the law of witness," she began, her voice amplified across galaxies, "the right of proof has been fulfilled. The Union stands not by accident, but by strength demonstrated." A ripple of energy flowed through the chamber walls, ancient law confirming her words. Daniel stepped forward when signaled, his voice steady despite the scale of the moment. "I stand here not as conqueror and not as subject," he said clearly, knowing his words were being translated into countless alien dialects and human languages at once. "I stand here because I chose to remain. On Earth, millions watch from screens in homes, offices, and city squares, the alien fleet still visible as silent guardians in orbit. I did not understand your laws when I saved your queen," Daniel continued, "but I understand choice, and today I choose alliance over fear." High above the chamber, a new holographic projection appeared, not of warships, but of Earth and the Carthian core worlds linked by glowing lines, a map not of conquest, but connection. Sirachthel raised her hand and placed it once again over Daniel's chest, mirroring the moment in the ruined station corridor. But this time there was no confusion, no glitching translator. "Before witness and empire," she declared, "the human Daniel Hayes stands as bonded consort and strategic equal to the throne." The phrase strategic equal echoed deliberately, a subtle but powerful shift in traditional wording, and every warlord in the chamber understood its meaning. This was not ceremonial marriage. This was shared authority. Far beyond the flagship, rival fleets that had lingered at the borders began to withdraw slowly, their commanders recalculating risk. The Union was no longer fragile. It was reinforced publicly. On Earth, government leaders exchanged cautious glances, the realization settling in that humanity was no longer isolated in the cosmos. It had entered a structure far larger than itself. But the moment was not entirely peaceful, because as the ceremony concluded, a distant alert flickered quietly across the fleet's long-range sensors, a signal from beyond known territory, unknown vessels observing from deep space, something older and more silent than the Carthian Empire itself. Sirachthel noticed the alert instantly, though she did not allow it to interrupt the ceremony. Her expression remained composed, but Daniel saw the brief shift in her eyes. The galaxy had noticed. After the formal declarations ended and the chamber slowly emptied once more, Daniel and Sarac stood alone again before the wide observation window, Earth glowing peacefully below, alien ships forming a constant protective ring. "It begins now," she said quietly, no longer speaking as ruler to consort, but as partner to partner. "What begins?" Daniel asked, though he suspected the answer. "Expectation," she replied. "Other empires will test this alliance, not because they doubt us, but because balance demands it." He nodded slowly, understanding that peace was not a permanent state. It was something maintained through strength and unity. "I was just trying to help," he said with a faint, almost disbelieving smile. "And you still are," she answered. Below them, Earth rotated calmly, unaware of how close it had come to annihilation, unaware of how a single act of courage in a broken hallway had rewritten its future. Daniel rested his hand lightly against the glass, not as a man trapped between worlds, but as a bridge connecting them. He thought back to the moment he lifted the metal beam, the smoke, the fear, the decision made without calculation, and he understood something clearly now. Humanity's strength was never in domination. It was in choice, in the willingness to act even when afraid. Behind them, Imperial officers prepared new diplomatic channels, joint defense councils, shared research initiatives between human scientists and alien engineers, the first foundations of a true alliance forming quietly in structured layers. But far beyond the protective ring of ships, that unknown signal pulsed again in the darkness of deep space, patient and watching. Sarac stepped beside him, her reflection blending with his in the glass, silver and human side by side. "You changed the fate of two civilizations," she said softly. Daniel exhaled slowly, eyes still fixed on Earth. "I thought I was helping one life," he replied. Outside, the fleet held steady, guardians against visible threats. And somewhere in the silent void beyond them, something unseen adjusted its course. The war between Earth and the Carthian Empire had ended before it truly began, but the story of their alliance was only just starting, and this time, humanity would not face the galaxy alone.